Maya DuPont was not only an influential woman in the fashion and real estate industries, but she was also a symbol of power, resilience, and discretion. At 42, she had risen to the top of her field, building a global empire that stretched from the skyscrapers of New York to the avenues of Paris, from the haute couture workshops of Milan to the luxury resorts of Dubai. His face, although discreet, was recognized in the most closed circles, beyond the red carpets and social evenings. She was not just a business mogul, but a figure who embodied a new form of power, that of women taking charge of their destiny while remaining in the shadows of the spotlight. She disliked being the center of attention, preferring to let her name float in private company discussions, among the men and women who held the reins of the world's major corporations. If his interventions in philanthropy conferences or charitable works were rare, they were always striking. Her speech, which she delivered with calm but unwavering determination, was respected by the elites. But it wasn't wealth or fame that motivated her. It was respect. Respect for people. Of those who, as she had experienced, had to fight in precarious living conditions to prove their worth. Maya never forgot where she came from. Born in a working-class neighborhood in the Paris suburbs, she grew up surrounded by the noise of factories and cobbled streets, in a modest but warm house. His father, a metalworker, and his mother, a cleaning lady in elite apartments, had passed on to him simple but essential values. Work hard, treat everyone with dignity, and above all, never let yourself be crushed by those who thought they were above others. Her parents, although not possessing university degrees or prestigious titles, had given her the most valuable education she could receive, that of the heart and social conscience. Despite the wealth she had accumulated over the years, Maya had never been able to break away from this reality. She remembered the contemptuous looks of the rich clients in the posh salons, the humiliations suffered by her mother, who, although one of the invisible employees of these large residences, was treated like a subwoman. Society had unforgiving rules, and she had been a silent victim of them for a long time. But by becoming a woman of power herself, she promised herself that these humiliations had to stop. This is how the idea was born in her that would turn her daily life upside down, the one that would lead her into a risky but necessary adventure, testing the true nature of the people around her. Maya knew that her service employees, often from modest backgrounds, were not always treated with the respect they deserved, despite their indispensable role in the success of her business. Its luxury hotels, its prestigious offices, its flamboyant residences, all this rested on the shoulders of concierges, chambermaids, cooks, receptionists, all often invisible to the eyes of customers. And even more, she knew that the supervisors and directors of her establishments, although competent and dedicated, could sometimes harbor prejudices or allow themselves to be carried away by an arrogance that came with their status. She said to herself that perhaps it was time to see all this with her own eyes, not from the side of management, but from the side of those we never see, the invisible ones. For the first time, Maya decided to disguise herself as a simple maid and sneak into one of her luxury hotels in Paris. Maya therefore went to one of her Parisian hotels, located in a refined area, where wealth was measured by the brilliance of the windows and the coldness of the marble statues. Yet, despite the splendor of the place, she knew that the social hierarchy was still as present as the golden walls. The service employees, who were responsible for maintenance, cleaning, and reception, were invisible. These men and women blended into the shadows of the pristine corridors, carrying out essential tasks without ever receiving recognition. Maya, in her maid uniform, a beige shirt, simple apron, and rubber gloves, looked like one of them. Her hair neatly tied into a plain bun and lack of makeup erased any trace of her identity. She introduced herself as Marie, a new recruit from a service agency. His goal was to see how his employees were treated when they were deemed invisible, without the aura of management. As expected, the stares were cold, indifferent, and sometimes even condescending. Customers passed by without even noticing the presence of housekeepers, concierges, or cooks. Luxury society had erected an invisible wall that separated the privileged from the rest. By mingling with this laborious daily life, Maya began her careful observation. What she discovered disturbed her. The condescending attitudes of some supervisors shocked her. Mr. Lefebvre, the assistant director, didn't even bother to greet the employees. When he spoke to them, It was with a dry tone, as if they were simply objects serving his own purposes. Mr. Marchand, another supervisor, enjoyed making disparaging remarks about employees who made minor errors. His nervous laughter after each criticism was reminiscent of the malevolence that permeated the hierarchy of this luxury hotel. Maya, who had experienced these humiliations in her youth, knew perfectly well what these little remarks could do to the soul. She understood the pain that came from social invisibility. But what scared him the most was the indifference of the customers. They did not pay attention to the people who took care of their daily needs. Those who, in the shadows, ensured the perfection of their stay never received gratitude, a smile or simple recognition. To them, these employees were nothing more than part of a department that had to operate like a well-oiled machine. Maya relives herself years ago, when she found herself in similar situations. As a teenager, she had often slipped backstage at big parties, behind the curtains and under the neon lights, while her parents worked tirelessly to earn a living. She remembered the insults whispered to her parents in the homes of the rich, the disdainful glances thrown at the maids who cleaned the chic salons. Maya, then young, had seen her parents damaged by these social injustices. Today, she fought against these same injustices with a power that left no doubt. She would not allow these humiliations to be repeated in her establishments. But she knew that to make a difference, you had to fully understand what was happening behind the scenes. She didn't have the answer yet, but she knew that this experience would lead her to an inevitable conclusion. Her employees, these invisible people, were going to reveal to her the whole truth about the society in which she lived, and how she could change things, once and for all. The days passed slowly, and Maya, under her disguise as a housekeeper, began to integrate more and more into the daily life of the hotel. Each task she accomplished, each wipe of the cloth or each sheet she changed, put her a little more in contact with her colleagues. Little by little, she manages to be accepted, as a simple worker among many others. But Maya was not content to simply observe. She listened, understood, and, above all, she felt. She learned the stories of the women and men who, as she had done before, struggled every day to survive in a society that seemed to give them so little consideration. There was Alice, a single mother who, despite her endless days cleaning rooms, still couldn't make ends meet to provide a better life for her children. There was also Karim, a brilliant young man, passionate about photography, but who, due to lack of means, was forced to work as a janitor to pay his bills. And then there was José, an immigrant from North Africa, who was desperate to integrate into a French society that only viewed him as a foreigner, regardless of how many years he had spent here. Maya listened to them without judging, sometimes providing a listening ear or a word of comfort. These moments of sharing reinforced her convictions and constantly reminded her of why she had embarked on this experience. To understand, to see with her own eyes the daily injustices these people faced. They all spoke of their dreams and aspirations, but behind these dreams was the harsh reality of poverty and social indifference. They felt trapped, condemned to live in a society that promised them luck, but rejected them whenever they tried to rise above their status. There were also more difficult stories to hear, the frustrations of those who had seen their dreams crushed under the weight of reality, like Hugo, a man in his 50s, who had worked in hotels all his life and who had seen his career stagnate because of his age. Maya felt deep empathy for these men and women, whose lives seemed marked by obstacles that no amount of will or talent seemed able to overcome. But beyond the simple stories of survival and the fight for a better future, Maya discovered something more insidious, something that would shake up her perception of everything she had built. Behind the scenes in the large reception rooms, among senior executives and department heads, she realized that these invisible employees were not just ignored, they were disrespected. These men and women who gave their body and soul to maintain the perfection of the place were only considered as interchangeable tools. This observation left her deeply troubled. Maya knew that inequalities existed in the world of work, but she never imagined that they could be so blatant and degrading even within her own establishments. Among the hotel's senior staff, several adopted an attitude that bordered on arrogance and contempt. Mr. Marchand, department head, gave orders in a disdainful manner, without ever trying to understand or support the employees in their work. His mocking laughter, when one of the employees made a minor mistake, was a real humiliation. But most disturbing to Maya was the complete lack of training or encouragement for these employees. Mistakes were punished with scathing reprimands, never with constructive solutions. Mr. Lefebvre, the assistant manager of the hotel, represented another facet of this detestable hierarchy. Although he was an intelligent and competent man at his job, his treatment of employees was quite different from what she would have expected in his establishments. He turned a blind eye to serious problems, such as security lapses, but expected impeccable results from service employees. His demands were inhumane, but the way he imposed them was cold and calculating, as if the well-being of others was only a secondary variable in the great game of performance. Maya found herself facing an image of the hotel world that she did not want to see, a society where the powerful were satisfied with the exploitation of the weak, without worrying about the human consequences. However, that wasn't enough to prepare Maya for what was about to happen the day the incident happened. What upset her the most was a seemingly innocuous incident, but the consequences of which would reveal the true nature of the system in which she operated. A customer, a highly respected businesswoman, came to the front desk to complain about the quality of her service. She had booked an exceptional room, but apparently, one detail had displeased her. Without hesitation, she accused the housekeeper, Marie, of negligence. The customer hadn't even bothered to check the facts before expressing her displeasure, but it was a shock how quickly Mr. Lefebvre, the assistant manager, accused Maya of misconduct. Maya had done nothing wrong. The room was spotless, as were all the rooms she cleaned. But that didn't seem to matter. The hotel manager didn't even take the time to check the facts or listen to the explanations. Without thinking, he accused Marie of negligence, making her appear responsible for the incident, simply because she was one of the invisibles. Maya, caught in the situation, felt an anger she hadn't felt in a long time. It was anger at injustice, at the way hard-working people were always the first to be blamed, the first to be sacrificed. But it was also anger at herself. How could she have ignored this for so long? This incident triggered a sudden realization in her, a desire to change things, to break the chains of this unjust hierarchy. Maya now knew she had to act, that her experience in that hotel was not just an observation but a call to action. She could no longer remain silent in the face of these injustices. She was no longer just a spectator, she became the protagonist of a struggle that she had never imagined so personal, but which was now inevitable. The next day, the weight of the events of the day before, and especially the humiliation she had experienced, no longer left her in peace. Maya knew the time had come to break the silence, assert her authority, and bring to light the truth that had been hidden. It would not be a simple meeting, but a decisive moment, the one where everything would change. Maya called an emergency meeting with all hotel executives, including Mr. Lefebvre, Mr. Marchand, and other influential members of the management staff. The meeting room, usually synonymous with strategic decisions and discussions about the profitability of the establishment, today seemed more solemn than ever. The senior executives, who were not expecting such a call, arrived one by one, visibly caught up in their usual obligations, thinking that this meeting would be a formality. But what they discovered shocked them in ways they had not anticipated. Maya was waiting for them, alone in the center of the large room. His gaze was calm, almost detached. She was no longer the simple housekeeper they had ignored. She was the owner of this entire empire they served. She stood up slowly without haste, taking off her uniform which had symbolized her disguise for days. In a calculated gesture, she carefully placed him on the nearby chair. Silence fell instantly. The executives' gazes met, their eyes wide with surprise and disbelief. The room, so often filled with loud discussion and nervous laughter, suddenly seemed meaningless. Then Maya spoke in a firm but measured voice. "I am Maya DuPont, owner of this hotel and the empire you serve here." The words hit the ears of the men and women present like a slap in the face. "I have observed your behavior for several days." The silence was heavy, as if every breath hung in the air. The tension in the room was palpable. Maya let the moment drag on, watching the faces of the men in front of her, some red with confusion, others pale with shame. She knew they never imagined someone like her could be there, hiding in the shadows, watching every misstep and abuse. she continued, without a tremor, but with a natural authority that she had not yet revealed. Some of you treat your employees like subhumans, exploiting them without recognition. You have forgotten that they are the ones who make this place work, who ensure its prestige. And you, she said, slowly turning towards Mr. Lefebvre, you had the audacity to accuse me without even checking the facts. She paused, allowing her words to sink into the minds of everyone present. There was no turning back now. Maya stood before them, not as a simple worker, but as an undeniable force, ready to set things right. You disappoint me. And you disappoint me even more because you don't seem to understand that respect, integrity and dignity are the true pillars of a successful business. The final words, heavy as lead, echoed through the room, hitting those responsible for a truth they never wanted to hear. They knew each other, these men and women, well enough to know that Maya was not there to lecture, but to restore a balance that they themselves had upset. In that moment, something profound happened. The employees, until then discreet spectators of this meeting, began to enter the room. It was like a silent but symbolic invasion. Maya invited them with a gesture, without hesitation. It was not a meeting between bosses and subordinates. It was a call for unity, for recognition of the human behind each uniform. She then turned to them, and her voice softened, becoming warmer, but no less firm. It is not money that creates true wealth. It's the dignity of everyone in this room. Each of you deserves to be respected, no matter what role you occupy. Today I wanted to see you through the eyes of others. And what I saw is unacceptable. The employees' eyes met. They were no longer just ghosts in the hotel corridors, invisible and depreciated. They were there in the moment, visible and proud, under the gaze of their boss, who finally offered them what they had always sought, recognition. But more than that, Maya offered them a promise, that of a future where dignity would be a priority. The very next day, Maya took matters into her own hands. It launched a training and awareness program in all its establishments. The objective was clear, to highlight the values of equality, respect and inclusion, not as empty slogans, but as principles to be integrated into every daily gesture. This program would not be content with words. It would be a real transformation of mentalities. But that wasn't all. Maya knew that change had to start with concrete actions. She immediately increased the salaries of service employees, a gesture that was received with emotion and gratitude. But beyond the financial question, she also offered coaching and personal development sessions for those who had lost part of their dignity over the years. These training courses would aim to restore self-confidence, to give employees back the feeling that they were capable of rising, not only in their work, but in their personal lives. The results were not long in coming. Mr. Lefebvre and Mr. Marchand, now humbled and embarrassed by the humiliation they had inflicted on their subordinates, began to review their practices. They now took the time to ensure their teams were well trained, listened more to their concerns, and sought to understand issues before reacting. Over the months, the hotel, once a symbol of arrogance and exploitation, became an example of kindness and respect in the luxury industry. What had been a workplace where employees were invisible and oppressed was transformed into a model of inclusion. Employees finally felt respected and valued, and the resulting loyalty had a direct impact on the quality of service. The hotel prospered not only economically, but also humanly. As for Maya, she remained true to herself, discreet, present in crucial moments but rarely in the forefront. However, one thing was certain. His influence, his action, and his vision had profoundly changed the soul of the company. She knew that true power lay in how you treated others, not money or status. Businesses thrive on numbers, of course, but they grow with the humanity they cultivate. And this Maya had learned, not by running an empire from her office, but by diving into the very heart of it, to see its flaws and its strengths.